Thanks so much for having us. I think I've met a lot of you guys at various media fam trips. We've brought media up to, across the state, and I've met many of you. So thank you guys so much. I know a lot of you made it kind of a trip up here, and I'm sure that might be for the $300 bottles of wine you'll be tasting later, but we'll pretend like it's for the PR session. So today we're really going to focus our conversation around the press release. I'm sure, as many of you know, there's a lot of different ways to get, your name out there from sort of a PR and marketing perspective. But, the press release is one really steadfast, great way to kind of just keep the drum beating as it relates to your media presence. So press release and how it can benefit your business. So, the purpose of the press release, obviously get attention, make news, and generate publicity, both, through your SEO and social media, as well as media coverage. Press releases are used so frequently because they're incredibly cost effective. Usually they're free, and can be used to create your brand awareness, really help build your credibility and facilitate your growth, and also reach different markets that you might not have other ways of reaching. Press releases can be used for all kinds of things, but to announce a new product, company milestone, accolades, or highlight newsworthy trends that you might be participating in or seeing or being able to speak to in the media. Do you want to talk at all about some of the other? We'll go on and you can talk about that, the reasons for releases.
Yeah.
So we're going to sort of just jump into some press release writing best practices. The most important thing is to use an attention-grabbing headline, right? Short, sweet, sort of, using words that grab the attention of the person that you're sending them to. The first paragraph should be sort of the nuts and bolts of the press release and include the most pertinent information that you're trying to get out there, because often, people only read the first paragraph. Make sure that it is newsworthy. This is not an advertisement. It's all about what makes this worthy of news coverage.
And some ways you can determine whether or not it's newsworthy is timeliness. So if you have an event coming up or a tasting or you're launching a new varietal, it should be timed to that event. So with the media, some of the print publications have longer lead times, like 3 to 4 months. But if you're targeting TV or some of the short leads, which most of the world now is short leads, it's online or social, you're really trying to get the news out to them in about 2 weeks to 10 days before the actual event. Other than that, you're way too far out and they're going to not be interested in it. They're going to be covering things that are more near term. And if you get too close, then they won't have enough time to write the story and you won't get coverage timed to the event, so it won't be driving people to the actual event.
Make sure your press release is really focused on one topic. We've heard a variety of stats, but it's usually around about 90% of the news that is covered is sort of PR generated. So they are looking for us to spoon feed them information, and they need a lot of content in this world now. And digital content is everywhere, and they're always looking for it. So the more we can sort of spoon feed them information on one topic, the better chance we have of getting that coverage. Make sure it's written in a professional tone. Write it like you're a reporter. So kind of, take cues from other news articles you've read. Make sure you proofread it. Have someone else proofread it. They really don't.
Proofread it again.
Yeah.
And again and again.
Yeah. Because a lot of times they copy and paste information from a press release directly into their article. And, this is your best chance of making sure the information is accurate and you're controlling your message.
The other thing that I'll say about that, whoa, this table moves, sorry, is that if you give them something newsworthy, something interesting, something that's well written, they're more likely to read what you send them the next time and the next time and the next time. If your first experience with them is a press release that has misspellings, bad punctuation, isn't newsworthy, they're more than likely not going to give you a second chance. They're very stingy with their blacklists.
Mm-hmm. So the key components of a press release, you always want to include your company logo, and obviously a link to your website and a link to any other pertinent website. So whether that be your partners, if you're working with, for example, you're talking about a new distribution channel or a restaurant, perhaps your wines are featured in. Always including links is a really good way to hope then the article will include a link, which is the best way to then drive the reader to your website, right? You want to include for immediate release under the date. Headline, grab the attention of the editor, but it should be relatively short, about 15 words or fewer. Subtitles are good underneath as sort of a secondary main thought to include. Lead paragraph, your organization's location. The media is going to be very interested in, where the news is coming from and whether it's pertinent to what they cover. So that region is particularly important. Bold type is good, and then always answering the 5 W's. So the who, the what, the when, the why, and the where of the story. That's sort of like PR 101, 5 W's. The second paragraph, supportive information, and then of course a quote from your sort of key spokesperson. And quotes are really particularly important, and we talk a little bit later about how to kind of craft the perfect quote, because they will be used in the article oftentimes verbatim if they don't conduct an interview with you themselves. Other paragraphs, just additional detail, non-essential information can then be used lower in the press release. It's also always great to have a call to action. So, click here for, information about this event, or click here to purchase wine from my website, for whatever it might be. Conclusion, a brief description of your organization. We call that sort of a boilerplate. That's something that you guys should sort of have at the ready for all press releases and marketing materials, which is really just sort of a statement that speaks to, your company, the sorts of wines that you have, your location, how long you've been in business, that sort of thing. And then immediate contact information. So the name, email, phone number, and the website of where the reporter can get additional information. Press release should not be much longer than a page. I mean, we often do press releases that are 2 to 3 pages, but these are, I think in most of your instances, 1 page is more than sufficient. They should not be overly formatted, be excessively detailed or wordy. Use a lot of exclamatory information. Exaggerate or mislead. These are things that reporters see through in a hurry. They want the facts, they want, the basics, the details, and the statements. Never use the words I, we, our, or me unless you are using it in your quote, which is then okay. It needs to be from the third party perspective.
One thing I'll say about press releases, if you are, and we can get to this at distribution, but I don't think it's in here, so I want to remember it, is that a lot of times if you're sending a press release via email to someone, you want to paste the body of the copy into your email as opposed to attaching it, because a lot of people use different types of computers, right? So Macs or PCs, and the files can come across corrupted, and then they're not getting the attachment. So you can paste the email into the body of paste the copy into the body of the email so that they see it right there. So, a quick note that says, want to make you aware of this press release is below, and then if you're giving them images, you want to send them to a link to a separate file. So whether you host your images on Dropbox or Box or Google Drive, you want to send them a link to download the images as opposed to attaching them, so that you're not clogging up their inbox with a 40 megabyte email. They hate that.
Yeah, and in this day and age, you always want to provide an image with your press release. All content requires images now. So, and obviously, the images should be, it can't have random, models in them that, they have to be very, a vineyard shot, a picture of your product, those are sort of the best shots, not shots that you would use in like an advertising campaign with, people sipping wine. They're looking for news shots, as it were. So distributing your press release. So after you've drafted your release and it's succinct and newsworthy, you need to figure out who should be receiving the release. So the best way to do that, and the way that we go about doing it, is really developing a targeted list of media contacts that you will send your release to based on sort of your target audience. So in some cases that might be the wine trade media. In some cases that might be your local newspaper. It might be the blogger who everybody in your particular area, is following. So there's a variety of ways to sort of determine who those folks are. Email, Twitter is really the best method to reach out to media nowadays. This information's pretty readily available. It can be time-consuming to get. We have a database to ascertain all of our media contacts. So obviously, we don't want to be searching for, your guys' media reporters, but if you're ever having a really difficult time and you need to reach out to the editor of the, Grand Junction Sentinel and you don't have it, we can get that information for you. But generally speaking, there's a contact page on every single media outlet's website, every blogger, or you can call the main desk and they will usually give you that information for emails. And obviously Twitter, that information is available through the message me channel. Media lists can include, so if you have a press release and you want to sort of get it out widely, your media list can include everything from, print media, so newspapers, to online, television, magazine, bloggers, and everyone can sort of be reached out to simultaneously. Send the release to the actual person via email. One email follow-up is considered appropriate. More than that is really not. They are not interested if you haven't heard back from them after one follow-up, generally speaking.
And when you are doing follow-up, so the general rule of thumb is if you send them a press release at 9 a.m. on Monday, unless it is urgent news, you should wait until at least 9 a.m. on Tuesday to follow up. So give them a full 24 hours, unless there's a breaking news situation that you're aware of, in which case give them 48 hours to process their emails.
The subject of your email is actually really critically important. So many reporters have told us that unless it is very clear to them that this is a press release, news story idea, something that indicates to them that this is something that they may be able to use in their daily content, they will just disregard, because these reporters are getting flooded with emails from people. So usually we just do whether it's a TV station, for example, if you want to invite a camera crew out to your vineyard to cover harvest, for example. In that scenario, you would be emailing the producer at whatever station, and you would say segment idea, harvest, crush, wine story. And then, you would have a quick email, press release, and, same for the newspaper, for example. It would be story idea, harvest, crush at Sutcliffe Wineries, and then you kind of go into the press release. Always want to post your press release to your social media channels and, of course, your website. The best is usually to have an in the news or, press release button on your website so that the media can easily access, this most recent press release, but all of your other past releases as well. It sort of allows them to get a broader picture of the sorts of news that you have out there. And then social media, and the best thing you can ever post on social media, we find, is press coverage. So if you put out that press release and then you get a big story in the Denver Post, using that as a social media post is really powerful for your audience, the consumer. If you're trying to reach more distribution channels, it really lends credibility and gives you a lot more platitude to sort of promote that particular piece. You can also send your press releases to us, and if we're always interested in hearing about industry news, and sometimes it's hard for us to get that information from all of the 130 wineries around the state. So feel free, write down my email and send me your press releases, and if we deem it newsworthy or something that we're already working on, we will get it out to our channels as well. And Kyle can then help potentially with social media and so forth. So once you've sent the release to your media list, they may be interested in doing a follow-up interview. Sometimes they'll take the information from the release, write their story, but many, many times they actually want to speak to you about the story so they can get their own authentic quotes and sort of craft their own story. So they're going to ask for images. If you haven't provided those, they're going to just sort of ask for additional information. So we'll kind of get into the do's and don'ts of the interview momentarily. Also, the other option is to put, if you have a press release that you feel like really needs a lot of eyes, or that you think will help really drive SEO, which is, search engine optimization, to your website, and it's all about getting links and getting some kind of online buzz, then there is also the option of the wire release. Often, smaller organizations can't afford the wire release, but there are some less expensive options than like the big ones like Business Wire and PR Newswire. There's something called PR Web, which is good for like one-off wire distribution lists, as well as eWeb, and so, or ePR Web. But you can easily just do a Google search, inexpensive press release wire services, and a variety of options will ensue. What we find with these is you're unlikely to get pickup in any sort of like mainstream media outlet with wire releases, but again, it's a good option for you to sort of get some SEO and buzz.
Usually with the wire releases, the major outlets have a separate page on their website that is just wire releases. So for instance, Yahoo has a page that's just wire releases, and Bloomberg Businessweek has a page that's just wire releases. So that's usually where those wire releases end up. So you're unlikely to get feature coverage, but what you are likely to get is, if somebody Googles your winery, you're going to see 25 listings of where your wire release is posted. So it does help with search engine optimization and bringing your website up to the top of those search channels, but you're not going to get feature coverage out of it. So if that's what you're looking for, a wire release is not necessarily the best way to go.
Yeah, and those obviously have a cost, where the other method is free. So Elena sort of touched on this a little bit. So types of media encounters. So instances in which it makes sense for you to reach out to the media and to draft a press release. So company announcement. So you have something to announce. Your company is the news. So things that would fall into this category for most of you would be, you're launching a new wine variety. Your wine variety has won a particular award. You're doing a prominent wine pairing dinner and would like your local, newspaper, bloggers to know. Anything to add to some?
Probably not.
Yeah, any time that you as an organization has, is involved in an interesting event, product launch, is worthy of a press release or a media alert, which is more just the who, what, where, when. Remember that, or sometimes the media would like to speak with you because you are an expert. So for example, we just are talking a lot about the phylloxera issue right now. The media is in need of information about the particular topic and needs to speak with people who can speak to it intelligently. Winemakers have a lot of knowledge that the rest of the world doesn't have, so the media is always looking to speak to them about what we can anticipate this summer, in this year's vintage, for example, or how climate change might be affecting or posing challenges to your guys' industry, things of that nature. So you may be contacted for comment around those issues. The unexpected crisis. So you're dealing with the press because of unexpected bad news or problems. A hailstorm has wiped out half of your crop. A bottle of your wine, for example, had listeria. These are terrible scenarios that I wish upon none of you, but certainly, have come up, and it relates to the media. The anticipated crisis. So you're dealing with press because of bad news that was anticipated. This is more, ideal because you have time to prepare. You can sort of come up with some thoughtful responses. You may even have the option of announcing the problem yourself. The winery is going bankrupt, whatever it might be. But in that scenario, you can draft the release, you can make sure you're owning the message, that sort of thing. And then litigation. Often if you're involved in a lawsuit, you're, really don't want to be in conversations with the media and will be pretty limited in your discussions. So interviews, whether it be an exciting announcement like a new vintage or an award, or the anticipated crisis, whatever. Here are some sort of tips on interviews. I'll let you sort of take this.
Okay. So the very first thing that you want to remember is that you're the expert. So with the media, generally you're going to be dealing with a beat writer, probably somebody who has covered wine in the past. However, in many instances, they won't know anything about wine. Like literally, they won't know anything about wine. So you want to approach that conversation that you are the expert and you have information that is valuable to them. So I would say in every scenario, whether it takes 3 deep breaths and, I'm a badass before you get on the phone with a reporter, always remember that you are the expert. A good tip is to repeat the question in your answer, making sure that you are answering the question that they've asked you. So, this is probably a bad example, but if they say, what's your position at the company? And you start going off on a tangent about your address, you're not answering their question, right? So my position in the company is X.
And another reason for wanting to repeat the question is if you are ever in the instance of doing a radio interview or a TV interview, and you've probably seen this when you've been watching the news, sometimes they're not going to air the producer's question during that interview, right? They're going to say, so tell me a little bit about, Colorado's current wine industry. And if you jump in and say something that says, well, it's going great, it doesn't really, for the viewer, they're not really getting any information. You just say, currently the Colorado wine industry is experiencing a, renaissance or whatever it might be. But you need to sort of repeat that question to make sure that the reader or the viewer is understanding the reason for the question.
Use numbers and statistics. Reporters love this. So whether it's data that you've gathered yourself or whether it's data that Doug and Kyle have gathered and distributed to you, whether it's statistics that you've been monitoring over the last 5 to 10 years or new statistics that you're including in your press release, you want to use as much data, numbers, and statistics as possible.
That's a good way to grab the intention-grabbing headline often includes statistics and numbers as well.
Use forward-looking statements. So, the media loves when you talk about, we expect to see X. We are hoping for Y. So making sure that you are building up what's coming in the future, that also gives you an opportunity to go back to the media when you're right and say, we predicted this 6 months ago, and now we're seeing the results. You want to always mention your company name and website. If you're doing a TV interview, usually they will have that running at the bottom, so it will say who you are and who you're with, and it may even say your website, or they will mention your website at the end. But if they say, where can our readers, where can our viewers get more information, you want to be able to say your website. So try to use that as much as possible. Answer the entire question. Reporters are notorious for asking 5-part questions. So a lot of times you'll want to write them down as they're asking them and make sure that you answer them in order. So make sure that you're answering their entire question. If you don't have time to answer the entire question, make sure that you answer the most important question first. Return to your key messaging points. So this would be referring back to a press release. So if somebody calls you to interview you about a press release that you sent them and they start asking you questions, you want to go back to what you wrote in the press release, right? Because that has the who, what, where, when, why, how. Those are all your key messages for this particular piece of news. So, in general, if a reporter calls me to ask follow-up questions about one of my clients, I open up that press release and make sure I have it right in front of me while I'm talking to them to ensure that I'm using the same verbiage and language that I put in the press release so that I stay on message. Use the reporter's name. That's just making a connection with the person. So this follows the rule of if you're in general conversation with somebody or you're in business development, oh, Courtney, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for asking me that question, Courtney. Courtney, that is a fantastic question. Let me tell you what I think about it.
It humanizes your relationship so that they are looking at you as somebody that they're having a conversation with, especially over the phone where it can be less human. It sort of makes it's funny people's reaction when you use their name, and this is particularly true again of TV or radio interviews. Oh, that's a great question, Greg Moss. For example. So it's just an easy trick.
So speak in quotable, short sound bites, and this relates to being concise, clear, and comprehensive at the bottom. It also relates to, on the next page, nothing's ever off the record. So remember that everything that you say has the potential to show up in an article. So the shorter and more concise you can be, the better quote you can put in 5 to 10 words, the more likely it will be used. So you want to make sure that when you're speaking, you're not droning on and on and on, and instead you're using something that's quotable, interesting, and short. Be friendly, pleasant, and funny. I mean, that's sort of obvious. But you don't want, even if it's negative news, you want to try not to be on the defensive, because reporters will pick up on that and they will start to like dig in, right? So why is this person acting pissed off? Why are they unhappy? Why don't they want to talk to me? They will dig in and try to figure it out. So always try to be friendly, pleasant, and funny. Again, that goes back to humanizing the relationship as well. If you don't know the answer to a question, it is totally fine to say, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me find out and I'll get back to you. Or, if you don't feel comfortable answering a question, you could say, let me think on that a while and I'll email you my response, or something like that. Reporters are used to that, and they will try to put you on the spot. So you should take control of that situation and say, let me get some data on that and get back to you. Let me think on that a little bit and get back to you. That's totally appropriate. Again, be concise, clear, and comprehensive, and then use positive keywords or descriptive words and phrases that you want to be identified with the company. So that would be obviously using your brand, talking about your varietals, any keywords that show up a lot on your website, you want to make sure to use in conversation as well.
All right, so newspaper, online magazines, Denver Post, DBJ, 5280, Denver Life, Travel and Leisure. Most of these interviews are conducted over the phone. They're usually 15, 20-minute conversations with a specific reporter. And they're often really looking for trends, stats, and interesting anecdotes. They're always looking to craft their headline, because the headline is what determines if their story will be read and whether or not their editor is going to run their story. So, as Elena mentioned, if they think that they can talk to you long enough and get some sort of dirt or something, an angle that someone else might not have, then they're going to dig for that angle. Print media tends to do more research than really any of the other outlets. We find TV does nothing. They will literally do no research at all. Their TV audience tends to be much more of like an 8th grade education level, whereas like a newspaper audience is more of an average adult. So most articles, print articles are focused on market news. They're 24-hour news cycles, super quick and dirty, stats, research, information. And they're also always looking for 2 to 3 quotes. So again, keeping those sound bites concise, articulate. Newspaper space is obviously very limited. Online coverage is much more available. Print space is next to non-existent anymore. And they're looking for you as the expert to craft their story, and they're really going to base a lot of that story, if they're a good reporter, on your interview response. Everything you say is on the record, 100%. This is off the record. That doesn't exist in reality. And you never say no comment. That's just the worst.
That is a massive
the worst thing you can ever say. If you feel uncomfortable answering a question, then you say, this is not a topic I'm able to discuss presently, something along those lines. Don't embellish, accurate, clear, to the point. And then, just answer everything to the best of your knowledge. And if you don't know, tell them you'll get back to them, and do. TV interviews, entirely a different ballgame. So, it's unlikely, maybe some of you would be doing TV interviews like in the Grand Junction market, the Colorado Springs market. If you're doing an interview in the Denver market, we would most likely sort of have a hand in that or be involved in that in terms of interview prep. But we are always here as well to offer any guidance on preparing for a television interview, because they're obviously the most nerve-wracking involved. The local TV stations in town we work with all the time, and Grand Junction we work with from time to time. So there's a variety of ways that you can do TV interviews. One is obviously the in-studio. So you go to their studio, you sit down with their reporter, They ask you a variety of questions based on a particular news angle. The other option is for them to actually come to your place of business, your winery, your tasting room, your vineyard, and for them to sort of, get a bunch of video B-roll, take a look at all of your different varieties and sit and chat with you about whatever it is they're interested in covering. Those are awesome. Those are you don't have to worry about it being live. They edit everything down so you sound incredibly articulate and all the ums and ahs are gone. And those are really exciting and fun. TV is like all about entertainment, whether it be the in-studio interview or the package. They are looking to entertain. So the pleasant, funny, compelling spokesperson is always going to get more time on TV. Any gesture you make is amplified tenfold on TV. The audience is very mainstream. Don't use jargon. Don't use terms that the general audience wouldn't know when you're talking to a TV camera. Keep it simple, simple, simple. Positive, humorous, professional. Broadcast tips are very similar to Elena's other print interview tips, but some things you can do to sort of help prepare, take several deep breaths. We always say yoga breathing before a TV interview is great, especially if it's live, because nerves are really amplified on camera. We ask you to not memorize answers. So if you are for some reason have a pretty clear idea of what they're going to be asking you, do not have a memorized answer in front of you. Just the thoughtful bulleted list of ideas that you'd like to touch on. You probably aren't going to get through all of those ideas, but just sort of having them at the ready.
And usually with broadcast interviews, you will have the questions ahead of time. You might not have them several days ahead of time, but you will at least have them like 12 to 24 hours ahead of time. And then you can put together some bullets and sort of run through like a mock interview with yourself. But it's really good not to memorize them. That ends up throwing people off, and it looks very staged on TV as well.
And I would encourage you guys, many of you, especially in the Grand Junction area, that TV market is great. They want to cover the wine industry. Make some relationships with those producers, those news editors, and if you're doing great interviews with them, they will keep coming back to you for, seasonal pieces. Oh, it's holiday time. Tell us the best wines to bring to the Christmas party. Oh, it's crush time. Colorado Wine Fest is here. What are you guys featuring? I mean, the TV news is just a plethora of silly feature stories available to you. So great to make those relationships, and they will come back if they can trust that you're going to give them a good interview. I implore you on the next one. If you are doing a television interview, do not look at the camera. Do not ever look at the camera. It looks so awkward, so kind of creepy, really. It's really just if you take nothing away from this. So look at the person who's asking you the questions. Usually, so that if I'm looking at the camera right now, there'll be the producer asking you the questions off to the side. Always look to the side. Wear solid colors, don't wear a lot of prints. It just looks hokey during an interview.
Don't wear green.
Yeah, don't wear green. You might have a floating head otherwise, the green screen. During the interview, speak in short, concise sound bites. Use those numbers. Spin things positively, even if you're talking about an industry and, a challenge in the industry that you're facing. Never lie or mislead, but there's always a spin that can be placed on something that has a positive air that will ultimately help your business. So whether Phylloxera is attacking your winery, you can say, you know what, but we have a ton of information and stats from, other areas around the country that have gone through this and have come out stronger, whatever it might be. Pleasant, funny, natural, concise, confident, and in control. Do not use a lot of jargon, and this is particularly true of the folks who perhaps are making the wine, and you guys have, equipment and, ingredients, all sorts of things that you are working with on a day-to-day basis that the rest of the world knows nothing about. So you do not want to use a lot of jargony terms when you're particularly on TV interviews. Radio interviews, pretty much the same scenario as a TV interview. They're trend focused. They're either in studio or over the phone. It's a Q&A style with a radio host, trend focused, usually about 3 minutes in length. Questions are a little bit usually more directed and highly specific. The audience tends to be a little more educated and more, knowledgeable about a particular area. But personality needs to come out more in your voice, obviously, with radio. So monotone, droning on, boring, long answers, really a no-no when it comes to radio interviews. All right, 5 tips to crafting the perfect quote. So this would be a quote you would put into a press release. This would be a quote that you would, say during your interview. Anytime you're trying to kind of get that perfect quote out there, here's some tips to crafting it. Memory words. So I would say this is probably the most important one. Using descriptive words that help identify your brand and stick in our brains. So, think things that are vivid and visual. So, when you're talking about the grapes that you're harvesting, talk about their color and their flavor, and make analogies that create imagery in your mind. I'm sort of not thinking of any at the moment, but I do. Using stats again. Numbers are meaningless without being put into context, though, and too many numbers are confusing. So remembering just like a few key statistics that can be sort of a kernel of information is a great way to get a quote in a newspaper article. Those forward-looking statements, future conditions, have a targeted message. We absorb and recall information that refers to us. So this is really important when it comes to all media. We all care about, at the end of the day, ourselves more than anything else, right? So if you know who you're speaking to, making sure that whatever you're saying really is relevant, pertinent, and useful information to that individual audience is really, really important. So, for example, if you have a new wine that you think is going to be particularly well received by stay-at-home moms, for example, then you're probably going to be doing an interview with, say, Mile High Mamas. And you want to specifically talk about, this wine is perfect for, inviting your mom friends over after, your kid's first day of kindergarten, whatever it might be, like getting really specific about that particular audience that you want your product sold to is the best way to get more ink.
And I would say another tip along those lines is that if you have an interview scheduled or you're going to be talking to a particular reporter, look up the previous stories that they've written, whether it's that one reporter or whether it's the publication. So the audience, if you're talking to the business editor of the Denver Post, the reader of that story is going to be different than if you are talking to, let's say, the food and wine editor at 5280 magazine, right? So the business editor is going to be more interested in the state of your company. Are you financially viable? How long have you been in business? Who are your executives and what are their expertise? When you are talking to 5280 food and wine writer, they want to know how many different types of wine do you have? What does it pair well with? Who is your consumer? Where do you sell your wine? So you want to make sure that you are educated about who you're speaking to and the audience that they serve prior to conducting that interview with them.
The next one is important just to sort of keep a reporter on message and make sure that